Hello, my name is Jimmy Cocking, and I'm recording this in Mbarntwa, Alice Springs, right in the middle of Australia. I want to acknowledge the Central Islander people as the traditional owners and custodians of the land that live and work where I am. I pay respects to their elders past, present and emerging. I also want to acknowledge and thank Mr. Eluali Ailil for bringing this all together and inviting me to share a snapshot from Australia's deserts, of which we have 10. I also want to acknowledge the other members of the Scientific Committee and extend respects to any dignitaries listening to this today. I've been a member of the Scientific Committee for the International Congress on Desert Economy since I was asked in 2020. I've been living in arid Australia for the last 14 years. I've been the CEO of the Arid Lands Environment Centre since 2008 and finished up in 2021. I was Director of Desert Knowledge Australia from 2015 to 2021 and Vice President of the Australian Conservation Foundation from 2018 to 2021. I was also a mayoral candidate here in Alice Springs in 2021 and I lost by 2 votes. Something for everyone to remember that in a democracy, every vote counts. I'm currently working as a consultant with my own firm called Northern Possibilities. I've recently been working on projects engaging with Aboriginal people living in remote communities on the issues of water security and another with Indigenous ranges and climate change. The title of my talk today is Beyond Aqua Nullius. So a brief history lesson in Australia. Australia has been continuously occupied by Aboriginal people for more than 50,000 years. Their connection to country is both spiritual and visceral. It is physically felt by people. In 1770, Captain Cook declared Australia terra nullius, meaning empty land. It gave the English a legal basis to colonise on the basis of settlement rather than invasion. The Aboriginal people were sidelined with massacres occurring across the country, and the last sanctioned one by government was in 1928 at Coniston, which is about 250 kilometres northwest of here in Alice Springs. In many instances, the land was taken for cattle and sheep grazing. The settler nation grew and became a jewel for the British Empire. In the post-World War II Australia, it moved towards greater independence from Britain and Aboriginal people's rights movement grew. In the 1970s, land was handed back and Aboriginal people moved back to their homelands. Housing and bore water was provided through grants and government programs. And today, Australian Aboriginal people make up 31% of the Northern Territory, with 1% of the Australian population living in the NT. The Territory accounts for 12% of the nation's homeless. And much of that original housing and infrastructure remains in various stages of disrepair and massively overcrowded housing. Where once the country and water was accessible to everyone who knew the land, the stories and the songs, people now rely on remote service delivery managers to provide services and maintain and repair housing and infrastructure. Climate change is already here, whether it's the fires, floods and heat waves here in Australia, or the cyclones, floods and droughts, heat waves and cascading social and economic environmental impacts that are affecting many people across the world. Australia's average temperature has risen by 1.4 degrees Celsius. It is already hot in many places and it's going to get hotter. Australia is the #1 metallurgical coal exporter and second largest thermal coal exporter. Australia is also the world's largest LNG exporter, sending 80 million tonnes of gas offshore in the last financial year. Australia is in the middle of a federal election at the moment, and climate change is barely rating a mention. While Australia has a zero emission target by 2050, there is no interim target with the current government beyond the 26 to 28% reduction the Morrison government took to Paris in 2015. The opposition is looking to reduce emissions by 43%, and science says that we need to reduce emissions by 50% by 2030. Both major parties are supporting a significant increase in gas developments, particularly here in the Northern Territory. The Beetaloo Basin, which if fully developed, would increase Australia's emissions by 13 to 22%, or from 39 to 117 million tonnes per year. The process of hydraulic fracturing, or fracking as it's referred to, uses 20 to 30 megalitres of water per frac. The long-term development is estimated for thousands of wells in the region. The process involves injecting high-pressure mix of water, sand, guar and a host of chemicals to extract the gas from the porous sandstone. There is a risk of contamination both above and below ground leaks. Aboriginal people, pastoralists and many in the Territory are concerned about the water and the climate risks associated with this direction of development. Also in the Northern Territory, currently a 40 gigalitre per year irrigated horticulture project is facing court action for its approval. The project seeks to extract the groundwater against the wishes of the traditional owners and the advice of environmental scientists. The water is proposed to irrigate 4,000 hectares of fruit trees and vegetable crops for the Chinese market. And this project is another part of the platform of the Northern Territory Government to grow the economy to $40 billion per year by 2030. Water is sacred. It is life. And for tens of thousands of years, Aboriginal people have looked after the lands and waters. Many now live without access to sustainable supplies of clean and safe water. The quality is impacting water infrastructure and housing. People in communities are dependent on people living hundreds of kilometres away on the provision and quality of their service. In a recent consultation, it was made clear that people in communities want agency over their water. They want to be given information about the quality and how much water they use and how much they have left. The impacts of climate change is already impacting on people with poor and overcrowded housing. The impacts on the country is already being seen with weedy and flammable grasses and reduced bush tucker. But there is some light on the horizon. There is strong investment in the Indigenous Ranger program, which is looking after country, paying people to look after country, and it's continuing culture and helping Australia reduce emissions and for the country to adapt to it. And both the major parties support a doubling of the Ranger program over the next 10 years. Never before have Australians been so concerned about reconciling the past and creating a new shared future with Aboriginal people as an important part of it. The Labor opposition is promising to support the Uluru Statement, which seeks to create an Aboriginal voice to Parliament, a Makarrata process or treaty process, and a truth-telling process to aid healing and reconciliation. And hopefully we can rectify the injustice where water is given away for export markets that are also contributing to cooking of our planet, while Australia's first people are made to pay for water to grow food for their communities and continue to live in developing world conditions while the rest of Australia enjoys an advanced society. We have moved past Terra Nullius, but we have not yet moved past Aqua Nullius in this country. We need to be investing in and including Aboriginal people in the decision-making processes over their lives, empowering and supporting investment in housing, water and renewable energy, health and education will help bring Aboriginal people into the picture and into the future. Giving agency over one's life and water is life-changing. Aboriginal people need to have agency over their water. They know what needs to be done in their communities. They know what needs not to be done in their country. And we need to listen to the world's first people and focus our efforts to reduce emissions and save our groundwater before it's too late. Thank you so much for the opportunity to give you this snapshot of the situation here in Central Australia and in Desert Australia. I am just one voice here. I've done a lot of research in this space and have many connections across the country. I really appreciate you listening to this today and having an opportunity to speak to this. Thank you and enjoy the rest of the conference.